Hello viewers at home, my name is Akinropo Akinola. You call me Parenting with Akinropo or Legacy Hot with Akinropo. So today on our show, Cradles of Eminence, we have a highly important, permit me to use that, highly important personality, a very important personality to you today during the period of General Ibrahim Babangida as the military president. You will agree with me that there are some names that stood out during that period. These were the names of the diplomats that really performed excellently well. That up to now, we see what they've done, we see their impacts in every sphere of influence. And you will agree with me that the purpose of the event, Cradles of Eminence, is to bring the core values of how eminent Nigerians, what made them tick, what were the values that they were raised with, because many of the youth, teenagers that we see when we go to schools to talk, when they mention the names of their role models, they hardly mention the names of our fathers, mothers, who had been part of new Nigeria that we hope for. So without much ado, we have today Professor Bolaji Akinyemi. So before I bring our daddy on the show, permit me to read a few of his profile. Professor Bolaji Akinyemi was born in Ilesha, in what is now known as Osun State. He attended Igbobi College in Yaba from 1955 until 1959, Christ School at Ado-Ekiti from 1960 to 1961, Temple University, Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, United States, from 1962 to 1964. Fletcher School of Law and Diplomacy, Tufts University, Medford, Massachusetts, US, 1964 to 1966, and Trinity College, Oxford, England, from 1966 until 1969. He was a visiting professor at the Graduate Institute of International Studies in Geneva and at the Diplomacy Training Program, University of Nairobi, Kenya, both in 1977. He was Regents Lecturer at the University of California, Los Angeles, United States of America in 1979, Professor of Political Science at the University of Lagos from 1983 until 1985, and Visiting Fellow, St. John's College, Cambridge, England in 1984. Professor Akinyemi was Director General of Nigerian Institute of International Affairs, NIIA, from 1975 until 1983. The Nigerian Institute of International Affairs is an organization focusing on Nigerian foreign policy. While he was Director General, it was involved in promoting Nigerian-Angolan relations, among other things. He has written and edited so many books and journals. He married Rowena Jane Vennie in 1970. They have one son and 3 daughters. Professor Akinyemi was appointed Minister of External Affairs by military leader Ibrahim Babangida in 1985. While in this position, he originated the Technical Aid Corps, what was known then, I remember this, TAC, a program which sent Nigerian professionals overseas to engage in volunteer work. It was designed to promote the country's image and status as a major contributor to Third World and particularly African development. He also came up with the concept of the concert of medium powers. In his position as Minister of External Affairs, Professor Akinyemi headed numerous Nigerian delegations. Among the delegations he headed were his country's delegations to the United Nations General Assembly session in 1985, the Organization of African Unity Council of Ministers session in 1986, the Non-Aligned Foreign Ministers Conference 1986, United Nations General Assembly special session on the critical economic situation in Africa 1986, the budget session of the Council of Ministers of the Organization of African Unity in 1987, the ordinary session of the Council of Ministers of the Organization of African Unity, same 1987, the United Nations General Assembly session 1987, and to the extraordinary session of the Council of Ministers of the Organization of African Unity, devoted to African debt. 1987. My guest, until recently, he has served in Federal Government's Committee on Electoral Reform, Committee on Investigating the Boko Haram Insurrection, and he was also the Deputy Chairman in 2014 of the National Conference. He is a holder of the Commander of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. This is CFR. This is the third National Honors of Nigeria. We want to welcome my guest on board now, Professor Bolaji Akinyemi. You're welcome, sir.
Thank you very much.
Sir, the purpose of this meeting, this event, is by way of research that we really want to know what made you tick. Back in the days, from 1985, when you were made the External Affairs Minister, that was when I started falling in love with a bow tie, with this bow tie that, sir, you were one of those role models that we looked at that when I grow up, I want to be dressing like Professor Bolaji Akinyemi, and here I am dressing like him. So that is one of those great benefits that you have given to my generation. But for the purpose of the generation that did not meet you, we want them to know what value system did you grow up with? Or let me just put it this way. What family system engineered you that made you think from 1960 up till now, you are still relevant in the space of Nigeria and outside Nigeria? Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much, Akin, for this opportunity to visually interact with your audience. I know you are targeting the youth, but there probably also be some older people who will stumble on your program. A tree doesn't make a forest. So, the values that I grew up, you cannot separate those values from the general environment. You see, civilizations grow in stages, and civilization is determined by the environment, the history of that particular civilization, the history of the country. All those of us who were born in the 1940s will have gone through the same process that I went through. And that process can best be described as a village society. A village society. One of the African saying is that in Africa, the village raises the child.
Yes, sir.
And by that, they mean everybody knows the child. Even though the term used to say village, you could say, in those days, in the environment, the town, everybody knew the child. Now, ordinarily, that will convey to you the concept that of the smallness of the environment that enabled everyone in that environment to know who that child is, to know where that child is supposed to be, at what time. That village knows the parents of the child, the grandparents of the child. So there is if you like, a geographical connotation to a village knowing the child, and a village raising the child. So the child is not born in isolation. The child is born into a culture, where X knows Y knows Z. And they all know the role that they are supposed to play. Sociologically, the saying also implies that we are all responsible for each other in that environment, in that village, in that society. We all have a responsibility to keep the child safe, to keep the child on a narrow and straight path. Every woman in the village, in that society, is a mother to that child. Every man in that village is a father to that child. That's the environment in which I grew in. And let me give you a practical illustration of that. As you've rightly pointed out in my biodata you read out, I was born in Ilesha. I grew up in Ilesha. But when I had to go to secondary school, I was admitted to Igbobi College, Yaba, Lagos. Getting from Ilesha to Lagos in those days, unless you came in a private car, you needed to change transportation 2 or 3 times. Maybe the first 2 times your mom or your dad will accompany you. After that, they expect you to go on your own. And so what happens is that your dad or your mom will take you to the motor park very early in the morning, look for a driver who is reasonable and who is responsible. And it is other drivers and people in the motor park who will tell your mom, no, don't use that driver. This is a more reliable, responsible driver. And your mom will go to him and introduce, please, this is my son. He's going all the way to Lagos, but I know you are only going to Ife. When you get to Ife, please hand him over to another responsible driver like you who is going to Ibadan. And then tell that driver, when he gets to Ibadan, he must look for a responsible driver who is going to Lagos, and tell him to drop him off at the Igbobi hospital, because that we shared, Igbobi College shared the same fence with the orthopedic hospital. You drop him there and he will find his way to his college. All that transaction dependent, one, on knowledge of the people you are dealing with, and trust. And trust that they will actually take care. And when the drivers then come back on their reverse journey, the driver who took me to Lagos, on his way back, when he gets to Ibadan, he will tell the driver in Ibadan going to Ife, I delivered him to the front of the orthopedic, so tell his mother The driver then who got to Ife will tell the one going to Ilesha, tell his mother that the driver who took him to Lagos delivered him. I'm not saying that, there was no kidnapping, but the kidnapping was so rare. So rare. I think I remember only once was there a case of kidnapping all the time I was in Ilesha. And the whole town was upside down because of that. The whole town was upside down. So it wasn't something you got engaged in. It wasn't. So, which then meant that if anything happened to me between Ilesha and Ife, there was somebody who was going to be held responsible. Between Ife and Ibadan, somebody was going to be, as there was responsibility on the side of quote-unquote guardians, there was also a responsibility on my side to make sure nobody went to report me, that I disappeared. They gave me a seat in the bus, and while they were busy, maybe sitting other passengers or waiting for other passengers, all of a sudden they couldn't find me. What do you mean you couldn't find me? So if they told me this is your seat, I will stay there. And if I got up, it would be like, where are you going? Where do you think you are going? Oh, I want to wee-wee. Oh, all right. Oh, yeah. The kekere, the conductor, follow him. Or I was going to I want to eat akara. I was, no, you sit here. Conductor, oh yeah, go and buy akara for him. So, and that's the concept. That's what they meant. You could see the essence of the responsibility on society and on me. And so you grow up appreciating the society you are in, your role, your status in that society. You also grow up, if I can put it very, very clearly, fearing that society. Because if I got into a fight somewhere, before I got home, my mother had already heard of it. And she'll be waiting for me. So one appreciated that. And I do appreciate the fact that things have changed. Society has changed. Why? Because society has become so big that the falcon is no longer hearing the far corner. The dog is no longer hearing the whistle of the hunter. Society has become so complex that you really don't know who to blame when things went wrong. My guardian in Lagos was my grandmother, but she wasn't the one who disciplined me if something went wrong. There was a gentleman in the house where they all lived who was called teacher because he was a teacher in a primary school. He was the disciplinarian
in the house,
in the compound. Every family will report their child to teacher. This is what this child had just done today. Please help me discipline him. So you ended up fearing the teacher more than even your own guardian or your parents. And when you see the teacher coming, you immediately behaved yourself. But then these days now, it's like, who told you to touch my child? There is a case recently where a girl who was disciplined in school because she came to school with a hairstyle which they said was indecent, has now sued the principal and the school to court
for 10 million.
You know about the case for discipline. You know of episodes where parents took thugs, that's what I'll call them, to school to flog teachers because they flogged their children. In my days, if I got into trouble and I was flogged in school, when I got home, and invariably there would be marks of flogging on my body. So, and it's my mother who will remove my school uniform. So there's no need to say nothing happened. What do you mean nothing happened? That will hand you a slap to start with. I'm asking you a question. I said nothing happened. These marks just came by themselves. By the time I finished telling my story, my mother will again cane me for embarrassing the family. So when you're talking about underworld value system, it's just strict discipline. Now, I know that psychology has changed. The Bible says, don't avoid the cane, because if you forget the cane, you will spoil the child. That's what the Bible said, and it was under that belief that I grew up. Now I know Western culture. You must not touch the child, or else they'll say you will ruin the child. You are inflicting damage on the child. I don't buy that. I must also, however, quickly add, before people say, yay, Prof's children, God help them. I can't remember ever hitting my children. I can't remember hitting them. I left that to the mother. I just didn't find it. I wasn't at ease hitting them, either with a cane or anything. So, but the point I'm trying to make is the essence of discipline, yes, sir, and its role in raising a child has been diminished in present day society. It's been diminished, and I think it's unfortunate. It is not that you want to harm the child, and when it's not asking you to be asking parents or teachers to be vicious, but it's part of the training. If a child is being irresponsible, there are gradations of discipline. Just raising your eyes, if that's the way you've raised your children, yes, can send a message to them that you've just stepped out of line. Some, it will be talking to them in a very harsh tone. With some, it may just be saying, are you proud of yourself, what you've just done? And then for some, it will take caning. Not all of us have the same character. No, not all of us have the same essence of thinking. Yeah. So, I wasn't spared caning. I got my own volume of it at home, in primary school, and in secondary school. I got my own volume of it. And well, obviously, if I'm still here, it's done me some good.
Thank you, sir. So, in the course of the conversation, I heard you talk more about your mom. Can we be right? Are we right to say your mom had more influence in your growing up, or in the reinforcement of positive values in you, sir?
Well, I will have to put it in my own words. Yes, my mom was the disciplinarian in the family because she was the constant present figure. My dad was three things in one. Number one, he was the principal of a secondary school, at least when we were growing up. Before then, he's been a traveling, supervisor, educational supervisor, covering several districts. So he was usually on the road. But by the time we were growing up, he was principal of a secondary school, number one. He was a politician. Now, in 2021, the term politician is a derogatory term. It's a derogatory term. And quite justifiably, given the behavior of our politicians. But in the days of my father, it was not like that. First of all, to be a politician and yet to be principal of a secondary school, you couldn't be a thug.
Couldn't be.
Both children of your party supporters, children of the opposition supporters, children of people who were not in politics at all, they were your children in the same school that you have to deal with. You have to educate, and you have to turn them into citizens. Now, if the principal himself is a thug, how could you do all of that? How could you earn the respect of your students? Not to talk about the respect of their parents. So, my father was a politician. He ended up being a member of the House of Representatives.
Sir, most or part of the challenges that the teenagers, children of today, part of the challenges they're facing is the fact that from the environment, from the media, from the government, they seem not to see any value alignment. Any value alignment. Okay, now they see government that says, don't do this. If you do this, you get fined. If you do this, you are sentenced to court, you get jailed, all those things. Those same teenagers, they are seeing inconsistency in the government of the day, right, sir? How do you advise the teenagers now, the youth now, that they shouldn't get discouraged regardless of what is happening in their environment? So how can we marry the two, sir? Bad environment, discouraging environment, and positive reinforcement of values in our children.
I think the young people, while focusing on the past to see what lessons they can draw from the kinds of things that you are doing, I am sure that you could sit down and come up with 500 names from the past that you will be glad to expose these people to. Or will it be 400 names? Or will it be 300 names? You know, remember, I hope you don't mind my continuing to quote from the Bible.
I don't mind, sir.
That's
the basis.
That's my background.
That's the basis.
My father was a reverend canon in the Anglican Church. My elder brother was an archdeacon in the Anglican Church, married to the daughter of a bishop. So that's part of, my background. Recall the negotiation between God and Abraham. Over Sodom and Gomorrah. And Abraham kept pleading with God. You mean if you find 10 righteous people there, you will kill those righteous people because of... And God said, I will spare if it's 10. And Abraham said, well, if it is 5, will you? And God said, I'll spare them. And Abraham said, look, I'm in trouble. I've been negotiating with God. Suppose it's only 3 that you'll find. And God said, I will spare. Now, the lesson that I'm drawing from this is, let the children not focus on the evildoers in society.
Let the children not focus on the evildoers in the society. Thank you, sir.
They will find 5 righteous people that they can point fingers to, that they can point attention to. It's true, I feel sorry for the children of today because the atmosphere, the environment is a very hostile one to their upbringing, whether it's domestic or international. You turn on the television set. In my days, television, you got practically lectures from, you use the term, role model. There was one role model in Western Nigerian television station. She was the wife of a judge. She was the wife of a judge. And her own area was devoted to talking to the girls, how girls should behave to become ladies. It was so elementary. How girls should sit. What kind of clothes girls should wear. How girls should eat. And then you had uncles who then spoke to us boys as to how to behave. But unfortunately, these days, you turn on the television set, even the television stations warn you about parental guidance.
Exactly.
To know what stations to block off. But even what to regard as regular stations that are not dangerous, some of the things you find on them, I feel sorry for the kids. And it's not always that they are at home. They interact outside
exactly,
with their friends, people who are not their friends, and not that kind of thing. So, but let them sit down and ask, What do I want to become? A Mandela, is it? A John F. Kennedy? Well, they won't remember who John F. Kennedy is. So, an Obama? You know, you will find role models even now. You don't need to go back to the ancient of days. You don't need to go back to those of us born in the 1940s. Although, yes, there were more of us, so there will be more of us to choose from.
Exactly.
Those of us born in the 1940s and so on. But even now, when you sit down, parents also should help in helping to draw attention to the Obamas, to the Mandelas, not the Zumas. Because as you have Mandela, you also have Zuma. In Nigeria, let the parents tell these young people, there was a time when a whole prime minister of Nigeria had only one police escort rider in front of his car, taking him from office to parliament and then back home. One escort rider. Not now when the motorcade will be 25 vehicles and sirens will be blowing and all that kind of thing. The youth should not think what is happening now is the normal one. Yes, you know, because so many heads of states have been assassinated, whether in Nigeria or in Great Britain or in America. The concept of security has been fast-moving motorcades to avoid, you know, unpleasant assassinations. So at times there are things that can be justified, where things are now happening now that are different from my days. But if in Sodom and Gomorrah they found 3, it was because they couldn't find any that God finally, destroyed it. If they could have found 3, God would have saved it. They should look for the 3 righteous people now. In society, whether national or international, they will find 3 righteous people. And those are the people they should target as their role models now.
Thank you, sir.
That's all.
Let's put it this way. What kind of value system you know that is going to work for the children, for the teenagers of today? What value system do you choose for them?
You need an education. An education empowers you. You need an education. Number 2, keep out of trouble. Don't get into prison and then start trying to justify it. Don't carry weapons to school because you could be provoked into using those weapons. I got into fights when I was in primary school, but our fights were, and you never actually landed a blow. It was shakara, as a fella will put it. We never carried guns. We never carried knives. So don't carry weapons. And ignore people who are challenging you. You have a focus of what you want to be. Don't get distracted. It doesn't pay to be distracted. Good luck to you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. Professor Akinyemi Bolaji Akinyemi. It's been an awesome experience to us on this show so far. If at all I haven't heard anything, there is one thing I'm taking away from this conversation, and that is, to you teenagers, to you youth, Prof said, in this present Nigeria, regardless of the challenges that you think the leaders are giving you, regardless of how porous, how bastardized the environment is, look for 3 righteous persons as your role model and follow them. And Prof said, get education, don't get into fights. You could have fights, it may not be possible not to fight, right? As teenagers, as children, as youth, even adults, it may be difficult, but don't carry weapons and be focused. Know where you are going, know what you want to be, know where you want to be. You can see, even at 80, Prof is still very, very agile. It is because he had invested in his life, not now, about 60, 70 years ago. This is something that I believe if we make use, we can adapt or adopt what Prof has said now, everyone will be better for it. And in the next 40 years, 50 years, you will be in the position to say, I learned this when I watched Cradles of Eminence, anchored by Akinyemi, when he featured Professor Bolaji Akinyemi. So till we come your way again on another interview with another eminent Nigeria, I remain yours, Akinyemi Akinola. Thank you.
Cradles of Eminence. Instructive, informative, and interesting.